Hey guys, how about a little pre-Christmas unboxing video? I believe what's in this box is that spare RCA chassis I mentioned in the video where I talked about the RCA 630TS that I just found. I think this is an 8T241 chassis. And I actually do have an 8T241. It's in storage right now though. Got it for, $20. Cabinet's a little rough, but the chassis looks to be intact. And I think the picture tube's good too. Kind of an ugly set though. Just a big old box with kind of a funky faux wood grain pattern on the front. Here's what they look like. Alright, so it looks like they used a whole mess of newspaper. I guess it's a little bit more environmentally friendly and easier to clean up than a bunch of peanuts. Well, looks like, hey, we've got both. Now, something like this is basically just big old hunk of steel with some parts attached to it, so I'm not real concerned about any shipping damage that may have incurred. Alright, so I think this is right side up, and this is the high voltage cage. This is where the picture tube sits. Tuner's over here. I'm gonna go grab a bag to stick all these peanuts in and then try to extricate this chassis. I managed to get it out of the box without making too much of a mess. And now I've got the challenge of actually unwrapping it. I guess I can't really fault the seller for being overzealous with this packing, but I've gotten so many packages like this lately, I hate unwrapping them. What is it? It's layers of bubble wrap wrapped with a whole lot of this clear plastic packing tape. The reason I hate it is it's just a pain to get apart. Especially, say, if there's some kind of, nice wood cabinet or Bakelite cabinet underneath. You don't want to damage it. Not a good idea to just start taking a knife like this and start cutting through it, because you may go down and cut into the item inside. The only real option is to just carefully start unwrapping it and carefully cutting it away. So underneath these foam blocks up front, are the controls. Be like vertical and horizontal hold, brightness, contrast, that type of thing. I'm kind of curious where the power and volume is. There seems to be a single function. This is dual function, but no click. So the tuning and the power must be side by side. Usually they put them on opposite sides of the chassis. Alright, there's the tuner. I think it's kind of a funky setup for the fine tuning on these. There's a belt here. So this is actual fine tuning, but this is the control. And they've got this belt here with a spring loaded tensioner on it. Seems like a little bit of engineering overkill, rather than just having, say, a fine tuning knob up here, or making it concentric somehow to the fine tuning in here. Because what happens is with these belts, inevitably, you can see when I turn this isn't rotating at all. Just get all gummed up. From years of this pushing in the same spot, this strap, which I think might be leather, or some type of rubber impregnated cloth maybe. This gets so kind of locked in place with memory of having pressure on this side. Just doesn't really want to work too well anymore. The action on this is kind of funky too. Most fine tuning controls use a variable capacitor. And I think this might be, but the way it works is a little bit funky. rotating this gets translated into an action that moves the plunger here up and down, which I think might be moving a slug in and out of a coil. And yeah, here finally, this is power and volume. So power right next to the channel selector. And here the chassis is completely unwrapped. So it's a similar shape to the 630TS chassis, but that one is a bit more angled here and here, and the tube and the control layout is quite a bit different. But I think they do have some parts in common, and if not, I may need some parts for this for my 8T241. Didn't realize it was going to come with all the tubes populated, so that's nice. Assuming they're good. Always nice to get some tubes. Just fly back and horizontal output tube and rectifier down inside there. And here's the back side. 8T241. I think they use the same chassis in a few other models, like an 8T243 and 8T241. I guess there is no 8T242 model. One thing I don't like about these early RCAs, both this and the 630TS, is that they use massive voltage divider resistors, which is what's behind this. And the 630TS is behind a metal box up here. That's to create various voltage potentials that the set needs. So other sets like my Admirals actually have two rectifiers. A rectifier tube, like a 5U4 for say the main 350 400 volt bus, and then a smaller 5Y3 rectifier for say the 125 or 150 volt bus. Instead, in this set, they just have the high voltage bus, like 400 volts, and they put a big, massive power resistor with various taps along it right across that 400 volt bus, and they tap off of it for various voltage points. The reason I don't like that is, one, you're wasting a whole lot of power here. This thing gets really hot. And two, these are prone to failure and kind of a pain to repair or replace. You have to use some discrete power resistors and kind of fit them in there. Let's see, how does this open up? This power cord. Wow, it's one of the worst I've ever seen. This rubber insulation is rock hard. That can certainly go. Let's see, is there anything holding this on? Kind of curious to see the flyback. Oh, I see. Jeez. Oh, that's the way it's supposed to be held on, but it looks like this piece of metal has been bent down, just locking this cover in. So I gotta grab a pair of pliers and bend this up, and then this cover will slide off. Once I bent this metal tab back, the cover came off pretty easily. And now I can see that there are actually three tubes missing. One would be the high voltage rectifier, that'd be that guy. Another one would be the damper tube. I'm not sure which one of these two would be. The other one is probably the horizontal oscillator tube. Alright, so let's take a look underneath. Power cord out of the way. Well, some work was done to it sometime in the past. A couple newer orange drops in there. But not a whole lot of work. Probably still the original electrolytics. Alright, so definitely be a good parts set. Or if nothing else, maybe some point down the road, maybe make a set just in a bare chassis like as a demonstration piece. Alright, now moving on to something a bit more interesting. I'm pointing the camera down at the floor because I've jumped the gun and I've already actually opened up the box on this. Which is probably just as well because I'm going to spare you a whole lot of cursing that I did when I opened the box. What is it? Dun, 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 dun. It is a blonde tandem bass. Predicta, of course. Rather uncommon. I'd like to say rare, but I don't know if that's really true. But certainly less common than the mahogany variety. I've only seen a couple of these for sale ever. And this one has an interesting history. This was on eBay maybe 6 weeks ago or so, and I was kind of drooling over it. But it was in Wyoming, and I think it was local pickup only. But regardless, the bidding went quite high. It went to just about $1,000. Well, imagine my surprise when a few weeks later, there were two separate listings. One for this item, and the other one was for the head unit with the picture tube in it, smashed to pieces. Apparently whoever paid all that money to buy this had it shipped, or the seller was willing to ship, or maybe it was shipping was optional from the beginning. I don't really recall. Regardless, the head unit was smashed to pieces. Picture tube shattered, the hard plastic cover shattered. However, the auction was really for the cable and the remaining hardware. I was bidding on that for a while, but it actually went for a bit higher than I wanted to spend, nearly $100. Because it just so happens I do actually have 3 head units. How's that possible, you might be wondering if you've been following all these Predicta Saga videos? Well, sure, the first one I got, the cable was clipped off. However, if you recall, somebody found me a cable. Haven't tested it yet, but I'm just going to assume that that cable's good, so that's one head unit. Now the second Predicta I got, the one that had been in the fire, the one that I refinished the cabinet on, that came with a head unit with a good replacement picture tube. That one works fine. The third one, the one that I'm going to use with this set, I actually got off of eBay 3, 4, 5 months ago, some time ago. And it's the most pristine of all the 3. Original picture tube, original everything, all the screws, nut, bolts, everything, it's all pristine. But it also has the original picture tube, which is virtually dead. So I'll be putting in one of those newer picture tubes I showed you with the longer neck, which will protrude from the back, but it should work just fine. So that was my real motivation to bid on this, is that I knew, or at least I was pretty sure I had a head unit that would work with it. So here it is. Now the reason I said I was cursing is that when I got this, it came in a big old box. It was packed fairly well, but what the shipper did was he put some heavy foam blocks at each corner, kind of with a carved out bit so they would fit on here snugly, which is fine. But he secured them with that same clear packing tape I was just complaining about, and he wrapped it around the foam and onto the cabinet, right on to the original finish. Which is a horrible idea. If you're ever going to ship anything, never let tape make contact with the original finish. So I had to painstakingly, over the course of over an hour, peel back that tape, trying to keep it at a right angle and such that I didn't rip off any of the old finish. And thank goodness I was able to, and there's not much adhesive residue left. A little bit here, and then I can feel some right here. But I've had some stuff in the past with similar tape on the old finish, and it was just unavoidable. Peel off the tape, the old finish just came right off. Don't ever do that. Always put some kind of barrier between your tape and the old finish. Alright, so what have we got? Well, first thing I noticed right away was, well, I got an antenna, and it's in really, really good condition. Brass plating's excellent. Telescoping action works just fine. So, that's a huge bonus right there. Knobs, well, got 2 knobs that look appropriate for this set and one that isn't. But I just found out the other night, last night, that you can get reproductions of these knobs. I knew that somebody had made them in the past, and I'd seen the reproductions for sale on eBay or now and then, but I thought that they weren't available anymore. You can get the knobs from an outfit called Old Time Replications. If you Google that, I'm sure you'll have no trouble finding them. And I've actually ordered from them in the past. For example, the push buttons for my Philco 3930 came from them. Remember, that's the Philco radio with the slant front that has the 8 push button presets. So, and I purchased some knobs from other sets too that do great work. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these are actually reproductions as well, because his reproductions look just like these. The white cream color do not have any lettering, and the brown do. Now I have some damaged or missing knobs from my other sets as well, so I'm going to order up a few of these. Certainly a set of cream for this, and some of brown for some other sets. Oh, I've got the channel knob, fine tuning, that's fine. And these power knobs, I noticed that there's a color mismatch on this set. Also, color mismatch on my Siesta set right over here, which I found kind of curious until there was a little discussion thread on the Antique Radio forum about these two knobs. Apparently, they're really, really hard to find, and reproductions are not available. Apparently, these use thin-walled plastic, they're reinforced with metal, kind of finicky to make reproductions of. Some people have tried, they just didn't come out good. So I think what I've got is between my various sets, a number of them have different colors between the two. However, light brown, cream, and this is black and light brown. If I take this light brown off of here and put it over here, all the match set on this. So I'm going to look through my various sets and see if I can mix and match and get some better color matches. Alright, now, the most striking thing on this, of course, is the cabinet. Sort of this limed oak, or whatever you want to call it, blonde finish. Very similar to what's on that Admiral over there. Or I imagine it's like a red oak substrate. Then various layers built up to give it this nice creamy finish. Fortunately, a little bit of damage here and there, like right here. And some good old latex paint I'll have to very carefully get off. This is a kind of veneer, faux finish kind of thing. This I think might actually be some kind of hardwood with like just a thin sort of translucent whitewash on it. So I'm not as concerned about getting the paint off of this. And curiously, there's only paint splattered on this. None got onto this. So it might not be too bad to touch up. Legs are much worse though. Like all the finish is gone from here down. Now recreating or touching up this finish is a black art. I've seen there's one outfit that sells what they call stain to replicate the Haywood Wakefield type blonde finish, but I'm not sure that would work on something like this. Be a little bit expensive to find out. I've also experimented with just taking some fresh red oak veneer, and I can kind of get something that's a fair approximation, but if I was going to do that, I'd want to strip the whole thing down, not just touch it up, and I'm not going to strip this whole thing down. What I came up with was, you start out with the bare wood, and you put on kind of like some thinned out, like a whitewash, basically, and then I put amber tinted shellac over that, or you could use amber tinted lacquer. And the combination of the red oak plus the whitish layer gives you kind of a pink, and then you put the yellowish amber over the pink layer, and it ends up actually looking quite a bit like this. Alright, so let's dig deeper. The other bad thing is that the high voltage connector's got some damage. Mainly the center conductor is broken loose, so it shipped around the ring here. Now this wasn't damaged when he shipped it to me, because he was holding this in place with tape. Might have been damaged way back to the original listing, or it might have been damaged from the initial buyer. I'm not sure. Now what I'm really curious about is to see the insides. When the seller originally had this listed, and when he relisted it, he never showed the insides. And I could hear something rattling around inside when the box arrived. So I'm going to pop this back off and see what's in here. Looks like some of the screws are already missing. We just have maybe 4 or 5 Phillips screws to take out. And let's see what's actually inside of this cabinet. Something even nastier than that packing tape is in this power cord, which is duct tape. May have a lot of uses, but it tends to leave a really sticky residue behind. Doesn't seem to be too bad in this case, though. Because at least externally this power cord looks fine. Of course, we saw in my Siesta set that there was an internal break in the power cord down here near the base, but let's hope that this one is alright. Pop out my little combo screwdriver set here. Put in Phillips head size. Do. Okay, here we go. Well, I gotta say, at first blush, this thing looks to be in fantastic condition inside. So we know one of mine, the one that I'm currently actively working on, was very rusty. Was working on removing the rust and had to go so far as to replace the socket in this corner. The one with the clip cable looked to be in good shape, but it was quite dirty. But this thing, I don't see any corrosion. I don't see much dirt. We have a flashlight and take a closer look inside. Okay. Now I can't remember from the original listing if this set, or if they tried to power up this set. They certainly didn't say it was operational, but I don't recall if they said they tried to power it up and it didn't work. Now, if they did try and it didn't work, I can think of a few possibilities based on my recently gained experience, and that would be the power switch could be bad, could be a tube filament burned out, could be a bad tube socket, could be a burned out thermistor, could be a burned out fusistor. Can't really see any of those from here, so I'll pull the chassis out in a moment. But like I said, well, everything I can see, including the high voltage cage and the original labels and everything. So I'm going to be real careful with this set. Pity this is damaged. Now, I suppose there is a vague possibility that somebody somewhere out there has a junker chassis and I could get a replacement socket. I doubt these are still available commercially. I'm sure that Philco made up a custom socket for this. Sure, I could probably glue it back. In fact, I bet somebody already did try to glue this back in place. So it looks like there's some kind of adhesive residue, and it doesn't fit in that firmly, so I think there's a bunch of goo or glued residue on there. But I suppose a little bit of careful adjustments and some good quality epoxy glue would get that secured fairly well. Alright, so take these out. In order to take these out, rather, I have to pop the knobs off the front, disconnect the antenna, remove 1, 2, 3 screws, and disconnect the speaker. This looks kind of odd. So notice this is a long wire running back here. Not sure what this is all about. I think it's for the speaker, but it normally wouldn't be that long. I just wanted the speaker. You know what somebody might have done, just as an ease for servicing? I might have installed an extra long wire, because it looks like there's plenty long enough that you can leave the speaker attached with the chassis out of the cabinet. In my other sets, the speaker leads are much shorter, and you have to reach in here and pluck them off the little stakes on the circuit board. Okay, I pulled all the knobs off, removed the 3 screws. Let's see if I can get this out. I think I know what's flapping around. That's what I suspected. It's top of the high voltage cage. I'll slide this back in and pop it on. So with it loose, there's not a whole lot of clearance to get the chassis out. Huh. That antenna was never even hooked up to anything. It's probably so long ago. It's probably rerouted back to the back terminal, so it's hooked up to who knows what kind of external signal source. Alright, we'll move the cabinet aside. Let's take a closer look at the cabinet. I do want to disconnect the speaker. Alright, so the wires for the speaker are soldered on at this end, twisted onto the speakers at the other end. Well, I'll figure something out. I had speculated earlier that these knobs might be reproductions, but no, I'm pretty sure these are all the original, with the thin plastic walls and the metal bands. This is why they could shoot up so easily. Very thin plastic. Alright, so I just left the speaker connected and just put the chassis next to the cabinet. So here it is, and as we can see, man, is this thing clean. Yeah, look at this. I'll show you my other chassis for a moment in comparison. So here's the one I'm currently restoring, and I think I'm close to having it restored. And you can see the difference, for example, on the top of this high voltage cage, how dull gray this is, and in general throughout the whole thing. Quite a contrast. Now right now, just because it's clean doesn't mean jack, because I know that that one I just showed you actually works. I had it powered up when I first got it. I don't know anything about the condition of this set. So I was wondering why it might not have worked if they even tried to power it up. Well, a fusible resistor has been replaced with a power resistor. And let's see inside the high voltage cage. Doesn't look too bad. You know, early on when I started getting into vintage TVs and learning about Predicas, I had heard about how the flybacks are prone to failure and they're so hard to find and all that, but you know what? Flyback has been fine in every single Predica that I've worked on, and this one looks fine too. In fact, another more experienced TV restorer on the East Coast, the guy who found me the cable for mine that had been clipped off, told me, don't worry about the flybacks, they're almost always good. That's just a myth, so I'll go with that. Alright, so we've seen the top, and I don't see any repairs whatsoever. Huh, that's curious. If you recall, in the one I'm working on, or one of the ones I talked about, the tandem sets, there was a resistor across this network, and the part number on this K network wasn't quite right for this chassis. And I suspected it may have been done at the factory because they ran out of the right component. This one has that same modification to it, so now I'm convinced this was done at the factory. This resistor strapped in in parallel to one of the internal resistors. Looks like only maybe one or two of the tubes are original, so this set may have seen a bit of use. But again, not many repairs. Alright, let's take a peek underneath. So, we know the fusible resistor has been replaced at some point. Looks like one of the diodes has been replaced as well. That's for the main power supply. Let's see, I'll flip it around this way. I don't see any repairs under here. Got the original tapped filament dropping resistor, all Philco caps, and the thermistor is in place. So you know what? I would not at all be surprised if I could power this setup. Slowly, perhaps, with a Variac, dim bulb tester, and all the rest of it. Just like I did on the other tandem set I got that I just showed you, and I was able to squeeze, or coax some life out of it before I launch into a full recap. I'm not going to do that tonight. Sorry for the tease, but maybe tomorrow night when I've got more time, I will try powering this setup under a controlled situation. I don't want to take any chances with this set because this is the most pristine of all the Philco sets I've got, I think. Or certainly the cleanest. Alright, cool. So that's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this look at a couple recent finds.